Thank you all very much for attending tonight. This is the Northside Conservative Action Alliance's 4th Legislative District debate. Tonight we feature candidates from both races, position 1 and 2 for state representative. I would also like to thank Cindy Marshall and Alan Marshall for the use of this wonderful facility tonight. And would also like to thank John Charleston for volunteering to do the audio and visual for this evening. One of the other things we just wanted to point out, this will be recorded and posted on YouTube in its entirety, and we also encourage anybody here that has a camera, feel free to take pictures, do video. We would ask that you maybe don't use the flash, just we don't want to distract anybody, but you're more than welcome to snap all the pictures you want, any recordings you'd like as well. So I'm going to hand it over to Bruce Wadsworth, and he's going to tell you a little bit about our organization.
I think it's important that we give you just a little information about who we are, so I'm going to read the document that we put together about 3 years ago to form and guide our group. It also appears up there if you care to read along. We recognize the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution as the founding and governing documents of this country. The Constitution describes a limited form of government with those powers not explicitly given to the government to be reserved to the states or to the people. Too many people today believe that government grants and protects their individual rights and freedoms, when in reality a large government threatens those rights and freedoms. The Declaration of Independence tells us our rights are unalienable and endowed by our Creator. We cannot rely on government to secure our rights. We must individually, proactively secure our rights from an overreaching government. The Northside Conservative Action Alliance is established for this purpose. The Alliance is dedicated to the education and promotion of the principles and ideals contained in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. We seek to identify, promote, and support candidates and initiatives that align with these principles. We believe that focusing on principles in lieu of personalities helps bring like-minded people together to work for common goals. We believe governments work best where it is closest to the people, and that we can affect the government most where it is closest to us. Therefore, we focus on local and state issues and candidates and campaigns. We hold these core principles: promoting individual freedoms over larger, more intrusive government, requiring financial responsibility, accountability, and transparency in our government and its officials, defending the right of we the people. Among these are life, liberty, personal property, free markets, and capitalism, supporting more choices at the local levels in lieu of central government mandates, reducing taxes, fees, regulations, and all other government impositions on individuals and businesses. The balance between freedom in business and government overregulation has tipped too far and must be corrected, securing a stable and honest monetary system. I'd like to just set the agenda for this evening. First, I want to address audiences from the questions. All questions will be asked by the moderators. Questions from the audiences will be handled via index cards. There are index cards in the back. If you have a question, please write it on the 3x5 cards provided. The cards will be collected, and time permitting, we will ask questions which are not addressed by the prepared questions. We already have many questions from the audience, I mean. Tonight we're pleased to have 4 candidates who are running for 2 separate legislative positions. The 2 candidates for position 1 are Diana Wilhite and Bob McCaslin. Neither is the incumbent. The 2 candidates for position 2 are the incumbent Matt Shea and the challenger Josh Arritola. Some of the questions that we ask tonight will be asked only of position 1 candidates, and some will be asked only of position 2 candidates, and many questions will be addressed to all 4 candidates. The questions were drafted by the Northside Conservative Action Alliance. No candidate has had any input to the questions. The questions have been kept confidential, except for a minute ago. Well, I guess not really true, because no candidate has seen or heard or otherwise been apprised of the questions. The format for this evening is a combination of forum and debate. Some of the questions are forum format in that they will be asked of the candidates without time allowed for rebuttal. Other questions are debate format in that time for rebuttal is planned. We have prepared slides to aid in the presentation of the questions. Included on the slides are the questions being asked, the candidates to whom the questions are directed, position 1, position 2, or all candidates, the time allotted for each candidate's response, and if the question is for debate, the time allotted for the rebuttals. The slides will remain up during the response and rebuttal period to remind the audience and the candidates of the questions being asked and the time allotted for the responses. We also have timers to keep the evening progressing so that we can get to all the prepared questions and hopefully some of the many we've gotten from the floor as well. Out of respect to the audience and the other candidates, we ask that you limit your responses to the allotted time. As the candidate is responding to the question, the time remaining will count down on a timer on one of these screens. You can see it now. The screen will turn yellow when you have only 5 seconds remaining. The screen will turn red when no time remains. There also will be a bell that will ring when time has expired. If you go over your allotted time, you'll be asked to stop, and if you sufficiently go over, your mic power will be cut. Each candidate will have the opportunity for an opening statement and a closing statement. If you feel you did not have enough time to answer a question, or you have a rebuttal you feel you could not make, these can be addressed in your closing statements. In addition, each candidate was asked to prepare 2 questions so that they could ask it of their opponent. The first question, these are direct candidate-to-candidate questions, will be asked at the start of the debate after the opening statements, and the second question will be asked towards the end of the debate. Restrooms are in the back behind that flag. And the final item is, we understand that debates can be spirited events. However, we are asking all members of the audience to be respectful of the candidates and the other audience members. Please do not applaud or make other distracting noises during the question and answer period. So that sets the agenda for this evening. I'll turn it over to Josh to start the questioning.
Thank you, Bruce. Okay. All right, for the opening statements for tonight, we would like you to address in your opening statement what in your background do you feel has prepared you for the office of state representative, and what has compelled you to seek this office. We will start with position 1, and we're going to go in alphabetical order for the opening statements. So Bob McCaslin, you have the floor.
What gives me experience mostly has to do with me working with people, with parents, with kids in my job as a kindergarten teacher. I've worked for 30 years with parents, and I've always treated them with respect and didn't always agree with them. And as a result, had probably 99% of them be willing to work with me for the better of their kids. And in my opinion, that's a transferable skill. You know, taking that to the legislature means that I can work with people across the aisle. I've got the ability to, even if I don't like somebody, I can still work with them. And it's been a pleasure to do so over the last 30 years. And I think just my family history too has given me a lot of experience too. Just the fact that my dad was a state senator for 30 years did rub off on me, and I am proud to be his son. So that's it for me.
Diana, same question.
Okay. Having been elected and served on the Spokane Valley City Council for 7 years, I've also served as a community volunteer on the boards of the Spokane Valley Partners, the Spokane Valley Fire District's Civil Service Commission, the Spokane Workforce Development Council, the National Federation of Independent Businesses, the Spokane Regional Transportation Council, the Central Valley School District Building Committee, and I've been a precinct officer for the Republican Party for 28 years. I believe in and will preserve the Constitution of the United States and defend our liberties as defined in the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence. I believe I am the most qualified candidate because I have been active in the community and I have been elected by the citizens of Spokane Valley as their council member for 7 years, and I served as mayor for 3 years. As mayor, most of the people who came to see me came because they were upset about something. And so I have learned how to deal with difficult situations and help people understand why or why not we could not do what they wanted, or in some cases help them to achieve their goal. So therefore, I ask for your support for my candidacy. Thank you.
For position 2, and I'll restate the question here. In your opening statement, please address what in your background do you feel has prepared you for the office of state representative, and what has compelled you to seek this office? We'll start with Josh Arritola.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. It's going to probably be a little warm this evening, but my name is Josh Arritola. I'm running for state representative, obviously, against Matt Shea. And I come from a very broken family here locally. I grew up here in Spokane, where I came from a family that struggled with drug and alcohol abuse, and eventually my sister and I were homeless. But shortly after that, just a year after that, we were very blessed to be taken in by a family from our church, and I was able to go to school and commissioned out of school into the United States Air Force, where I was a munitions maintenance officer and fighter aircraft maintenance officer. Shortly after that, I was recruited out of the Air Force by the Target Corporation, the world's second largest retailer, and I was the youngest store manager ever hired in company history for Target, and I was a turnaround guy. My job was to take stores that couldn't make money and turn them around so they could make money. Shortly after that, I started my own business, and we do safety implementations in the energy sector. So we work for oil and gas companies, helping them implement business processes centered around safety and profitability. You know, one of the things I tell a lot of people is it's really important that we start looking at ourselves as voters and who we're sending to the Capitol. And we desperately need to start sending people that understand business. There's a big difference between academically understanding business and actually running a business. So we'll have a lot to talk about that time, but I look forward to this debate. Thank you for coming.
Representative Shea, same question.
Well, thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. As I always start off, everything, our hope is not in man, our hope is in Jesus Christ. And I think that that is one of the base qualifiers for anybody in elected office. I would tell you that my family has been in eastern Washington for over 4 generations. We homesteaded down near Dayton on the Scottish side, and on the Irish side ran lumber up to the J. Neal's Lumber Company in Libby, Montana. And they could not survive in the climate we have in Washington State today. And when I came back after serving 10 years in the United States military and 2 combat tours overseas, one in Bosnia and one in Iraq, I had seen how much my country had changed. And it compelled me to run for legislative office, to stand up and stand on that line and defend small business owners, to defend the people and defend constitutional rights. I'm married. My lovely wife Victoria is here tonight. My mom and dad are here as well. And I'm the nephew of one of the largest industrial manufacturers in Spokane Valley, my uncle, Wayne Barnes and Carla Barnes. They're here tonight as well. I own 2 businesses. And I have struggled to understand how Olympia can continue its regulatory tyranny over the businesses we have in Washington State. And so that's what prompted me to do the Freedom Agenda, which is now the most successful slate of conservative bills in 20 years in Washington, 50 Democrat co-sponsors, 25 national news stories, and one of the reasons why I think that qualifies me for re-election. Thank you.
Okay, our next question is that the candidates have been asked to have a question that they are going to ask to their opponent, and since Matt Shea was the first or the last one to speak before, he gets to ask the question first. You have 90 seconds to answer.
90. Is everybody relaxed?
90 minutes is a long time.
Josh, my question to you is why you ran against a Republican and spent $100,000, wasted $100,000 that could have been spent on the west side of the state getting us a majority in the House of Representatives, especially since, at least in 2 of those swing districts, we probably could win with that $100,000.
Is the time resetting or is... Yes. Okay, how long do I have? 90 seconds. 90 seconds, okay. Thanks for the question. The reason why I decided to run against you, Matt, is it's my personal opinion that you're not focused on issues that are important to our district, and you're focused on issues elsewhere. And maybe those issues are important. I'm not saying they're not. But I really feel like we need a representative that focuses on our issues in the 4th Legislative District, not traveling to Idaho all the time to rally up the, let's see, last week it was the Panhandle Pachyderms, I think it was, and then off to Nevada with Clive and Bundy. And again, maybe those are important issues, but for us, I feel like we need a representative that focuses on finishing the North Spokane corridor, actually knows how to create a business-friendly environment, and wants to reform adoptions and foster care because they're fundamentally broken in our state. We need somebody that's going to focus on our issues and work for us as a whole community and push our agenda, not their agenda. And that's one of the reasons why. And you said spent $100,000, wasted $100,000. Every single dime of my campaign has come from local business owners that are done with you. Every single dime, and they would disagree that that money has not been wasted. $40,000 of your money has come from lobbyists in Olympia. You're bought and paid for by lobbyists in Olympia. So if there's anybody wasting money, it's not me. We as business owners feel very strongly about this. We feel very strongly about this, and that's why local businesses and local people have put in over $100,000.
For each of these, there will be a 30-second rebuttal. So Representative Shea, you have 30 seconds.
This campaign isn't about me, it's about you. It's about the fact that you just took max contributions from SEIU Healthcare, which is committed to destroying Republican candidates in this state, which is committed to implementing Obamacare, and you're taking money from the pro-gas tax lobby. So, yeah, this is about who is fighting for small business, and it's been me with the Freedom Agenda having $75 million in economic impact for Spokane Valley alone.
You get to ask him the question now. The question that you brought prepared. Yep.
Every single sheriff in the entire state presented legislation that would prevent people from breaking the law and lying on duty. For example, there was a deputy that followed young ladies around that he thought were attractive and pulled them over to get their name, their ID, their address, where they lived, and basically as a stalker. And that person got fired by the sheriff, obviously, and then he presented legislation that prevented arbitration from reinstating that officer. And we had bipartisan support, and you led the charge to reinstate this guy as a deputy in defeating this legislation that would have protected the sheriff's firing. Why are you, 2 sessions in a row, why have you fought the sheriff's efforts to restore integrity to our police force?
I don't have anything to do with the hiring or firing of sheriff deputies, but I will address the legislation over in Olympia, which all of our staff, constitutional attorneys, including myself, a constitutional attorney admitted to practice all the way through the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, it was unconstitutional in the way it was written. We offered solutions, and we're going to be introducing a bill this next session to fix this problem that is constitutional. That was the only problem with it, and part of my rubric in going to Olympia is running this through the simple process of, is it constitutional? Can it be done in the private sector? And is private business going to actually be competing against the government with something like that? So when I run it through the rubric and it doesn't even pass the first one of, is it constitutional? Absolutely, I'm going to be opposed to it, as was the rest of my entire caucus, not just me.
Josh, you have a 30-second rebuttal.
Again, it's really important to know the facts. His entire caucus, maybe the Liberty caucus, but not the Republican caucus. Joel, out of the 7th, right? The deputy leader of the caucus, He was for it. He sponsored it. Susan Fagan out of the NICE sponsored it. Kevin Parker sponsored it. Mike Baumgartner sponsored it. Mike Padden, sir, Senator, are you in the room? Oh, he left? Senator Padden sponsored it. So to say it's the Republicans standing against it being unconstitutional is totally false.
Okay, now we go to Diana asking Mr. McCaslin. And so,
The vote, is it on? Green light's on.
Test. Hello.
Thank you. Okay. The Washington State Voters Guide asked all of us to submit information for publication for the voters. And they asked you to put elected experience. And so under that, Mr. McCaslin, you put serving on the Planning Commission, which is an appointed position. Why did you put that under elected experience?
That was a very good question. That was my mistake, and even though I caught it that same night, and I sent an email to the person doing that, they still, didn't change it. So I see it as an opportunity to serve, just in the same way as this is an opportunity to serve, which is the main reason I'm running. So I joined the Planning Commission for that, and I made a mistake. That's the honest truth.
No, there's
30 seconds for rebuttal.
there's no. Thank you.
Just test.
Okay, then you asked the question, and
It's my turn.
90 seconds to answer.
Okay. My question, Diana, is why you supported an increase in property taxes while you were on the Spokane Valley City Council.
I don't recall that I supported an increase. As a city council, we get a 1% increase in property tax. That's something that happens automatically. So we did not take any increases in property tax over what was the allowable amount. The city of Spokane Valley has two main duties. One is police protection and one is street preservation. And as the present city council knows, there are a lot of demands to be able to provide those services that the citizens want.
I do count the 1% that the present city council has turned down as an opportunity to lower taxes rather than raise them. So, just do you think you should raise taxes just because it's legal?
Well, I don't raise taxes just because it's legal, but we still need to provide services. Police protection and streets are very expensive, so we need to maintain those, and that's what the citizens ask us to do.
This next question is for position 2 candidates. We respect and appreciate your military service, and could you please tell us about your military service? You can see on the screen there, we're interested in which branch, rank, what years did you serve, how many years total were you deployed, awards, any medals, and what was the character of your discharge. You have 90 seconds, and Josh, would you please go first? What did I say? 60 seconds.
So my military service, I was commissioned into active duty Air Force in Seattle and went up to North Pole, Alaska, where I was started off as a 21M, which is a munitions maintenance officer, then transitioned to a fighter aircraft maintenance officer, where we maintained the A-10 aircraft. The first unit I led was about 170 troops with about $500 million in assets, and then I had a aircraft unit, 21AO aircraft, valued at about $1 billion and had about 200 troops. And so yeah, that was my military service, fighter aircraft. There's 68,000 of us Air Force vets in the area, and I served in the Air Force. What was it, the nature of the discharge? Was that it? Yeah, I separated honorably. So is that it?
Well, I graduated from Gonzaga University, ROTC, as a distinguished military graduate, and I was commissioned in the Armored Cavalry and went to Fort Carson, Colorado, where I served for 4.5 years, including about 8 months over in Bosnia-Herzegovina in 2000, where we encountered quite a few mass graves and some pretty ugly things over there. After that, I got into the Washington National Guard as an infantry company commander and served for a long time there, actually 3 years, one of which was over in Iraq and serving in combat 2004 and 2005. I was awarded the Bronze Star Medal, Meritorious Service Medal, among many other things. And you don't just have to take my word for it. One of my former soldiers is here today, Justin Maddox, who served with me over there. And as far as the honorable discharge, I was honorably discharged actually twice from the active Army and from the National Guard. That's it.
Our next question is for position 1. On this, we will start with Bob McCaslin. And could you please tell us, what are your top policy priorities if you are elected?
I have 3. Number 1 is reforming government, especially reforming the way it spends your money. Number 2 are jobs in the economy. We have to make it more friendly for business to do business in the state of Washington. Here in Spokane, we're losing way too much to Idaho. I have several friends who have left, to start businesses in Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene. And last of all is education. I mean, we should have the best schools in the nation here in the state of Washington. And I think there are some better ways to fund it than through a raise in taxes. So we can find it if we do the reforms in government, and that's it.
Same question for Diana.
Thank you. My top priorities are, having been a small business owner, I had to learn to live on the income that my sales generated. And so I am very cognizant of the fact that you have to learn to live within the means that you have. And the state of Washington does not know how to do that, and I want to help reform them. They need to learn, they have to live within the amount of revenue that they have been generated. And that may mean that we might have to cut some programs or do some reforms, but I think that's what's very important. Then secondly, as a business owner, regulations. I can't tell you how many times I've heard from my fellow business persons about the impacts of L&I and unemployment on their business. So we need to go after those 2 agencies and try to get some reforms. I was on a committee that tried to lead the way to change the law with regard to labor and industry to allow private industry to provide unemployment insurance.
We would like to just ask one request of the candidates as well, if they could refrain from using any cell phones or any type of technological devices like that while on stage. Don't want anybody texting, getting any help from the audience.
I don't have a cell phone up here.
The next question is for Matt, and the question is a 60-second question, and it is, What specific steps should the legislature take to improve the economic outlook in our state?
Well, first of all, we need to pass the entire freedom agenda. We did that, we'd be great. Just passing part of it, we had $75 million in economic impact positive to Spokane County with dock manufacturers and those folks that make motorcycle conversion kits for our disabled veterans and many, many other things. I think that the specific steps that need to be done are we have to have regulatory reform. We have to reform the Administrative Procedures Act. Businesses should be innocent until proven guilty, not the other way around. We should also take a look at what's going on with the Department of Revenue and targeting intentionally certain businesses for audits. And lastly, I think one of the very key steps that we need to do is stop any sort of tax increases on our small business that could drive them out of this state to Idaho. For example, the gas tax. Many of my friends are in the trucking industry that would absolutely crush them.
Same question, yes. Okay. What specific steps should the legislature take to improve the economic outlook of our state?
So again, this is a big part of a difference between academically understanding business and actually understanding business. There's a couple steps we could take right away. From a minority government, we need to work on regulatory speed. Regulations are killing business, and we need to work on reforms to reduce the regulations, but that's done by a majority in the Senate, majority in the House, and forcing a governor into it or having the governorship. We need to look at regulatory speed. I have a friend that tried to get a license to operate, went to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho to get his license to operate. Took him 5 minutes to get the license, came to the Spokane Valley, took him 4 months to get the license to operate. Regulatory speed is actually what's killing business.
Thank you. And then Diana, the same question.
I believe that we need to do regulatory reform with regard to improving the economic outlook in our state. Many businesses, as you've heard, think about going to Idaho because the regulations there are less burdensome. So we need to work on making those changes not only to the B&O tax, but also to how we do unemployment compensation and labor and industry, because that is what's hurting my fellow business members.
Thank you. Bob, same question.
Well, I think it even before, the legislature passes, great reforms toward that, we could really go after government agencies. And the way to do that is to allow them to carry over budget surpluses. And by doing that, then give them some encouragement to keep doing that. And if that means put priority in funding, and then you only have to fund up to that. And I mean, the culture right now is spend it or lose it. And we've got to get rid of that, because if no matter how much revenue we have coming in, if we're continuing to do the spend it or lose it thing, we've got big problems. And so deregulating businesses, absolutely. We need to make it common sense reform so that businesses can just deal with less regulations.
Okay, the next question is for all candidates, and Bob, we'll start with you. You've kind of touched on this, but we're asking for more, I guess. Agencies and bureaucracies continue to grow in size and power and ever-increasing reach into our business, property, and lives. Do you view this as a problem? If so, how will you move to limit the size and power of these agencies?
Well, yeah, I did speak to that a bit. So I think the way you do it is you have to change the culture. And the only way you can change a culture is by rewarding different behavior. And it's not too much different than teaching kindergarten. I mean, it's You know, when a kid makes a great choice, you give him lots of praise and you give him privileges. And I would think the same thing works, you know, for the state government. I think too, it's also, you know, it's going to be reaching across the aisle and bringing some other people along. And I've got some good experience at that too. So I'm done.
Diana, the same question.
Okay. It was said that if the agency has money left over, we should reward them. Well, if they have money left over, I don't think I want them to keep it because they're using it to retaliate against businesses. So in order to cut their growth and their power, we need to look at the regulations that monitor them and what their duties are. The labor and industry has a opinion that they're supposed to go in and fine people. We need to change that to, they need to educate the businesses on what they need to do to make sure their workers are safe rather than just going in and slapping them with a fine the very first time. So we need to change how they look at what they do with businesses. So it is a problem, and we do need to work on it. We want to limit the size of these agencies. We do not want to give them more money so they can be more and more intrusive in the lives of our businesses.
Josh, same question. Would you like me to reread it, or okay? Okay.
So again, as a business owner, we really need to focus on regulatory speed. It's absolutely killing us. This question is about more bureaucratic and deregulation. And I would like to see a couple agencies wholesale disappear. The Department of Ecology should be gone. It's a duplicate service of the EPA, and it is an extremely aggressive against farmers. My family comes from farming, and it's not a good organization. They don't need to do anything good for us. L&I obviously needs to go, but again, those things come from majorities. But again, in the compare and contrast in who to vote for with the people on our stage, only one of us on this stage has actually grown bureaucracy. And here in 1636, Matt Shea passed a ATV bill that he champions as a $75 million boon for business when nothing's been done. No roads have been opened for ATVs, and you look here, and the list of fees, not taxes, fees are ridiculous. There's an $18 fee, a $12 fee, another $18 fee, a $30 fee, another $18 fee, and the list goes on of all the fees that you passed on ATV bills. And I'm out of time. There's a lot more regulations that you pass. You expanded bureaucracy.
Well, that's a lie. So let's set the record straight. There's only 2 fees. They were actually with automobiles, and since they were going to be driving on roads, ATVs had to fall into the same thing, and that was actually at the request of the State Patrol, so I guess you can take that up with them. But what I would say as far as agencies and bureaucracies are concerned, House Bill 1162, Key Freedom Agenda Bill, the Regulatory Fairness Act, House Bill 1163, Regulatory Fairness and Accountability Act. When you talk about regulatory speed, that's not what's killing business, it's all the rules. We need to actually put a check on the rulemaking power of these agencies so that they have to come to the legislature if it has an economic impact of over $1,000, and that's what the Freedom Agenda does. The other part of this is we need to continue to open up new agricultural industries and new roads like we did with the ATV bill, which were opened in Ponderay County and Stevens County and other counties in the north. And we need to continue to check agencies like the Department of Ecology. I would love to see it go away. But one of the things we did is get their head sacked this last year with the help of the Freedom Foundation.
You each addressed each other in it, so. All right, this next question is also for position 2. We'll start with Representative Shea. Do you believe humans play a role in global climate change? 30 seconds.
30 seconds? No. Climate has been changing since the beginning of time, since God created the earth. What we have today is what I think is conclusively disproven. As I stated recently with some constituents, there's an early winter in Canada and Alaska, and boy, this global warming is freezing.
Josh Arritola, same question.
So I'm going to use my 30 seconds real quick. No. There was a $18 registration fee, a $10.75 per 8 Termit speed, a $12... Can you pause the time? a $12 road legal fee, an $18 license fee, a $12 deposit fee.
Any
Again,
type of rebuttals that are not addressed, you can save those for your closing
appreciate
statement.
it. I took my 30 seconds. There's only one of
Perfect.
us that has actually raised taxes on this stage.
The next question, Diana, and this is 30 seconds. Do you support the state empowerment, implement Common Core state standards? Why or why not?
I've talked to a number of teachers as I've been out on the campaign trail and discovered there's some fatal flaws in the Common Core standards. And so although we do need to have standards, there's things the kids need to learn as they reach each grade level, I don't think Common Core is the way to go. So I believe we need to look at changing it.
Okay, Bob? Same question.
Common Core is a one-size-fits-all type of thing, and even though it's touted as something that's generated by governors of the states, it is tied in to a lot of things that the federal government's doing too. So I'm against it for that. I'm also against it because it doesn't adequately in any way teach the Constitution or the Founding Fathers and their history.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, this next question is for all candidates, and before I ask it, I'd like to again ask the crowd to please refrain from comments and booing or yaying or whatever it happens to be. And if you choose as a candidate to answer the question and take your remaining time to use as a rebuttal, that is allowed. So let's just try to keep it civil, please, so we can get through the questions. Thank you.
Can candidates cheer for themselves?
If you're not part of the audience, I guess you can. Okay, the next question. Where we started? Okay, Josh, it's for you. And it is for all candidates. The state Supreme Court has ruled to hold the state in contempt of court because they say the legislature has not adequately funded basic education. Do you agree with this ruling? Why or why not? You have 60 seconds.
So I think fundamentally there's a separation of powers issue here that the legislator has boxed itself into in giving the guidelines to the court. And I would be for repealing laws and changing laws and making sure to redefine the court's role so that it cannot take a major overstep. They aren't the budgeting. This is the people's money, and the people's House and the people's Senate need to be able to control the budgeting. So fundamentally I have a problem with McCleary and the overstep by the Supreme Court. So I would definitely, that is the first priority. As the second priority, I do think education is funded very well. We have one of the highest rates in the country. I think the money is misused in some areas. I think we spend too much money in some areas and not enough in others. For example, with 10 seconds left, building green schools. It's an absolute boondoggle in how it's structured and how it's scored and how it's rated. And we wasted $50 million in our local community trying to build a green school that ended up not being green.
Thank you. Matt, same question, please.
Yeah, thank you. I wholeheartedly disagree with what the Supreme Court did. It wasn't the legislature giving the Supreme Court guidelines. It was the Supreme Court overstepping its bounds and telling the legislature how to spend money. Legislature has the power of the purse, not the Washington State Supreme Court, or for that matter, the United States Supreme Court if it gets up there. The whole point behind this entire thing was to intimidate the legislature into spending more money on education. I co-authored the letter along with 36 of my colleagues to send to the Supreme Court and tell them that they overstepped. And one of the ideas that we had, and I support Mike Baumgartner in this, is perhaps we should take the funding out of the Supreme Court to help fund education if that's what they want us to do. The second thing that is part of this that I think that is very key is the Washington Education Association has poured tons of money into my opponent, and that is the organization that for 30 years has continually asked for more and more money.
Next question.
Bob, the same question, please. Would you like
Well,
it restated, or?
No, I'm pretty familiar with it. The fact that the Supreme Court did rule that it was the price tag. As much as I would like to see good funding for public schools, as has been mentioned before, there is waste, and just in some of the figures that the Supreme Court is using are not even totally accurate about how we fund education today and how much actually goes there. So it's an awful way for the Supreme Court not to follow the Constitution, and they're the ones that are supposed to be implementing it.
The Supreme Court has overstepped its bounds. It is the legislature that decides how much the funding should be, not the Supreme Court.
All right, our next question will be only for position 2. And, we'll start with Representative Shea. The northeastern counties of our state have been experiencing problems with the introduction of non-native wolves. With the northern boundary of the 4th District being less than a day's travel for a pack of wolves, what should the state do to address this issue?
I think the state should declare, well, if we had the ability for the state to declare emergency, I think they should declare a state of emergency and take care of the wolf problem like Idaho did. But since that's not happening, I applaud the work of the county commissioners in the northeast counties, for instance, Ferry County, which declared a state of emergency recently to take care of this wolf problem. There have actually been wolf sightings not just up on Mount Spokane, but south toward the Palouse. So this is becoming a huge issue, not just for cattle ranchers, but also for those that raise sheep and everything else. We have the power at the local level to stop what the federal government did by introducing wolves. These aren't even native to the United States. They're from Canada. We have the power at the local level to stop this, and I support and will continue to support any county commissioner, any local official that is going to do that.
Josh, same question.
Yeah, wolves are a major problem. 2 weeks ago, we had one on my property. I live on near the northern boundary of the 4th, and we had a wolf in our front yard when we came out in the morning to let our dog out to do its thing in the morning. And it's a big problem, and I would support any type of legislation that reduced the wolf population as quickly and fast and as permanent as possible. They're absolutely not indigenous to this area, and we need to get rid of them.
Okay, our next question.
Did you get this one?
Yeah, we're giving you a better one. The question is, and you have 30 seconds for this, what will be the first bill you will introduce if elected? And Bob, would you answer first?
It's a toss-up between two things. One is a bill that would deal with how the state agencies spend their money and allowing to carry over budget surpluses. And within that, I want to tell you, if we would be spending less money, we would be rewarding those agencies for spending less money. So the other one has to do with juries, and I'm out of time.
Diana, same question.
The first bill I would introduce if elected has to do with regulatory reform. As a business owner, that's the thing that's on the backs of our necks that keeps us from being able to hire more people because of all the regulations that small businesses have to deal with. So one of the first things I would want to do is to see about reforms in the Department of Labor and Industry.
Thank you. We've already really touched on the next question, so we're going to replace it with one from the audience. And this is to all, and we will start with Diana. I'm sorry you won't see the question up there, so I'll read it slowly. Will you respect and represent moderate Republicans and 4th District Democrats if elected? Why or why not?
Would you repeat the
Yes, I
question?
will. Yeah. Will you respect and represent moderate Republicans and 4th District Democrats if elected? Why or why not?
Well, the office that I'm running for is called a representative. And that's what a representative does. It represents all the people of the 4th. And what I would say to those people, as you come to me with issues that you have to convince me of why this would be good for all the citizens of the 4th Legislative District. I represent all of you, and we want to have legislation that's fair and equitable for everyone. And so anyone who comes to my office with an idea or a suggestion for new legislation would have to prove to me why this would benefit the citizens of the 4th Legislative District.
Bob, the same question, I'll repeat it. Will you respect and represent moderate Republicans and 4th District Democrats if elected? Why or why not?
Well, I can tell you, let's go to one of the extremes. When I get to doorbell a house, that the first thing they say, well, you don't want to talk to me, I'm a Democrat. I get a big smile on my face because the first thing I tell them is, I said, well, are you a citizen of the 4th District? They say, yes. And I said, well, it's my job to represent you. Now, I'm sure we're going to have some differences in opinion, but I'll listen to you. And I think, one of the most important things a representative can do is be available and be a person who can be reached and is willing to get back to that person. If it's, a phone call, if they're there in your office, if you don't have a pressing appointment already, do it right then. But if you can't, then set up an appointment because, as Diana said, we're representatives and our job is to represent the people, the 4th District.
Okay, Matt, same question. I'm going to read it to you again. Will you respect and represent moderate Republicans and 4th District Democrats if reelected, I guess? Why or why not?
Absolutely. And in fact, I meet with virtually everybody that comes down to Olympia, that Facebook messages me or emails me or calls me on the telephone. And in particular, last year, I was very proud to go speak before a group that I was invited by a lesbian anarchist. I mean, my goodness gracious. I can listen and work with anybody, and I think that's one of the reasons the Freedom Agenda was so successful, because we had 50 Democrat co-sponsors. We might disagree on all issues but 2, and I was able to identify what those 2 are and work very respectfully with them across the aisle. I will say, while I will respect them, I won't represent socialism. I won't represent the implementation of Obamacare, which is championed by SEIU Healthcare. I won't represent Common Core standards, which some people in WEA champion. I won't represent that, and I won't represent the pro-gas tax lobby. So while I'll respect them and respect their opinions, I won't represent socialist views. Thank you.
Josh, same question. Please let me read it. Will you respect and represent moderate Republicans and 4th District Democrats if elected? Why or why not?
One of the things I have to say is representatives only have the right to represent. They don't have to have the right to rule. You've brought up the WA a couple times, and the reason why I'm endorsed by, and they gave one check to me, was because when they took a group of Central Valley Republican teachers to the Capitol, Mike Padden met with them, Leonard Christian met with him, and every other Republican in the area met with him, and you refused to meet with them. They sat outside your office for 30 minutes, and you refused to even shake their hand on your way out. That's not representation. Honestly, you want to know what the concessions WA wanted out of me? To be responsive, pick up the phone, and respectful. Don't demonize them. That's it. My wife's a nurse. She's a cardiothoracic ICU nurse, and she works at Kootenai Medical in the ICUs. That's why we have the endorsement of the nurses. We have the endorsement of nurses because my wife's a nurse, and I understand the issues, and we're on the same page. We're not on the same page with Obamacare. I'm not for Obamacare on any level.
All right, our next question is for position 2. We wanted to find something in the county platform that had a little bit of controversy in it. So the Spokane County Republican Party platform has a plank under the Jobs, Economy, and Currency section that states, we support the use of a commodity-backed currency as legal alternative to fiat Federal Reserve notes. Do you agree with this plank? Why or why not? We'll start with Josh Arritola.
This is the one part of the party platform that I genuinely disagree with. And again, I know there's a lot of you in the room that think that's the answer to reining in the Federal Reserve and reining in a bunch of other issues. But in the end, it would fundamentally, overnight, collapse not only the national economy, but the global economy. The price of oil would soar instantaneously, and you would not be able to afford gas. I absolutely, on no level, support switching to the gold standard. Let's just call it what it is, switching to the gold standard. I know that's very popular with the Ron Paul movement, but that is absolutely not where National Republicans are. It's not where 4th District people are. If you were to take a vote, we would not support that.
Well, first I'd like to recognize the efforts of Judy Crowder and the Sound Money Committee. I absolutely 100% agree with this for a couple reasons. First of all, a commodity-based currency and commodity-backed currency is not gold standard. It is gold, silver, and inventory. In other words, products that are created by our businesses. It would actually dramatically help businesses by changing our just-in-time logistics system and actually allowing businesses to keep more inventory on hand and then get some money for backing the currency with it. And it's really strange because Russia and China are doing this, and they're going away from the United States dollar, and the only way to combat that is to actually back ours with our production base here in the United States of America. It's a basic, simple principle of economics, and I think Ron Paul has actually done a great job talking about that, but the whole Austrian school has, and I do not believe in Keynesian economics where we just continue to print fiat currency that has no value behind it. The only thing that happens then is economic collapse.
Okay, the next question is for Bob, and the mic is on. The question is for Bob, and it's a 60-second question. The question is, tell us about your strategy for introducing legislation and garnering significant support to get it passed.
I think the first thing is I don't have to have my name at the top of it. I'm willing to have somebody else take credit if it's good legislation. And second of all, it has to pass the muster of being constitutional. And we have got a great state constitution, and it provides the limits that we desperately need that we seem to have lost as far as how the West Side spends our money. And again, it's the whole attitude of that this is not the legislators' money to spend, it's people's money. People who work hard and pay taxes. It's their money, so we need to treat it as such.
Diana, same question.
My strategy for introducing legislation and garnering sufficient support to get it passed is to be a good listener, because you have to know where people are coming from if they have objections to the legislation that you're introducing. You have to be a good listener. You have to understand why they're objecting to it so you can craft your argument as to why this is good legislation and should be passed. So you need to be good listeners. You need to know who your opposition is. You need to get to know them and find out where they're coming from if you're going to be able to pass legislation.
Thank you. Matt, same question.
I think this entails three things. The first thing is you need to build a base of support for any legislation you have, and it has to be a base of support that's going to be active. One of the things we did with the Freedom Agenda is we actually built a network of over 100,000 activists in Washington State alone, so when we have a bill come up and we want actually people not even talking about getting it a hearing, but just having people sign on to it, we can actually put that action item out for people to do, and they actually do it. It's one of the reasons the Freedom Agenda is the most successful slate of conservative bills in over 2 decades. With 65 bills, we had 42 hearings, 32 passed out of the House or Senate, and 12 signed into law by our liberal governor. The second thing is we've got to listen to Democrats. I actually agree with Diana. We've got to find where that common ground is, and that's why we had 50 Democrat co-sponsors on our bills. The third thing, we need to find media that actually will listen to conservative principles and not spew things that are false and get them on our side. Thank you.
Josh, the same question.
I think it starts with building relationships. You know, as I've started to go into this political arena, I've started to work with lots of different Republicans that are already elected, Democrats that are already elected, and just introduce myself, grab coffee, and tell them my story. And that's the extent of kind of starting those relationships. But I think, again, when it comes back to representing our community, we have to be credible in our community. And we're slamming the doors on teachers because they're teachers. We're not building bridges, and we're not representing our community. And I think that's really important. Any strategy to pass legislation needs to be about representing our people with respect and dignity. And that hasn't been the case. And we really need people that will reach across the aisle and be responsive and respectful. And that's what I'll do as a state legislator.
Thank you, Josh. This is for position 2 candidates once again, and you get to start, Josh. This is one that has a 30-second response and a 30-second rebuttal. You have both received money from large organizations and groups that lobby in Olympia. You have accepted money, have you accepted money from any group that you disagree with on their primary issues? 30 seconds.
Absolutely. You know, you look at the WEA. What was their request of me? Be responsive and respectful. That's all we ask of you. When we come to the office, don't demonize us. Don't call us names. Don't make fun of our issues. Just listen. That's all they wanted. That's it. That's all they've ever wanted for a Republican representative out of the 4th, because we're a very conservative district. And so when you look at that question, taking money from organizations, only one of us was supported by the police union that stopped the Sheriff's Integrity First legislation.
Speaking of demonizing, you've demonized me as an extremist, and yet I got the endorsement of law enforcement, so thank you for recognizing that. The second issue that I think is part of this is, yes, we don't agree on every issue. Of course we don't agree on every issue. But I actually work with everybody that's there in Olympia, and that's why we have the most successful slate of conservative bills. So that's the facts. Those are the actions. And so, yes, I have accepted money from people that I disagree with, but most of the people do agree with me, and that's why they support me.
Sure, absolutely. In the last 4 months, both of our campaigns have raised about $40,000. Nearly every single dime of Matt Shea's money, with the exception of one donation from Dwayne Alton, came from Olympia. Every single dime of my money came from the 4th District. There's a big difference, if you go through the PDCs, between who's supporting who. And when you look at this, again, who's supporting you and why? Bought and paid for Olympia lobbyists.
The great thing is I have over 300 individual sponsors, most from the 4th District. In fact, there's many in the audience today that have given me money here in the last 30 days. They're raising their hands right now, so that's a lie. The second thing that I think is a straight lie is that you didn't get every single penny from inside the 4th District. SCIU Healthcare, last time I checked, is outside the 4th District. And by the way, if you're going to try and hamstring it in with some of their members, it's still one of the worst unions in the country. I would never take money from them.
All right, our next question is for position 1. We'll be starting with Diana. How can the state make health care more affordable for the citizens of Washington?
Get rid of Obamacare. You know, we need to have some reforms in healthcare. I mean, I know there are some tort reforms that we need to have. We need to look at how procedures are billed. It's a tough question, but we do need to make it affordable for people because we're all getting older, and we're probably going to need a little more health care as we go along, so we need to try to make it more affordable. I think putting it back into the hands of private businesses and the competition among the private healthcare companies would help to make our healthcare more affordable for our citizens. But Obamacare has to go.
I think getting rid of Obamacare in totality is a great is a great idea, and we need to pursue that in every way we can. But I think practically we're going to have to chip away at it, and the more we involve private business in that, the better. The more we bring up the issues that private business has with Obamacare, the better. Because it's going to be hard for businesses, even on the west side, to argue with, oh wow, we're paying so much more, we could provide so much more for our workers if we didn't have this, or we didn't have this, we didn't have this. So I think we need to attack it piecemeal.
We were going to make you work now because we're running out of time, so we're going to jump to some questions. Oh, I'm sorry. We got, never mind.
Okay. 24, okay. Okay. The next question is for position 2, candidates only. And the first one there is, the question is, how has your opponent misrepresented your stance on issues during the campaign? And this has 60 seconds and then 30 seconds for rebuttal. And Josh, would you like to lead?
You know, I don't have a lot of time to pay attention to Matt's campaign. I don't know necessarily what he's saying about me, but there are some whisper campaigns out there that have come back to us from PCOs that have been talking directly with people, one of them being Josh isn't a Christian. And I can tell you that on April 6, 1994, I found my faith in God and became a follower, and would love to share that story with anybody, but there is one issue probably about the gas tax and health care. I am not for the gas tax, and you continue to pump as if I'm for the gas tax, and I'm absolutely not for the gas tax, nor am I for Obamacare.
Matt?
I've been looking forward to this one. Let's talk the Bundy Ranch. So I'm just going to cut right to the chase. I've been demonized as a racist and an extremist. Now, no matter what I say, I mean, I served in the military with people of all ethnicities and all races. But it doesn't matter what I say. I still get demonized and implied to be a racist. So if anybody has any questions on where I stand on that, they can ask my good friend Doug Taft, who is sitting here on the side, and ask him what he thinks about me being a racist. The second thing, good thing we have a rebuttal.
Okay, Josh, rebuttal.
I've heard people call Cliven Bundy a racist. I've actually never heard anybody call you a racist. No one's ever told me you're a racist. I've never said you're a racist. I wouldn't think there's any evidence out there to say you're racist. I would say that you're highly distracted by issues outside the state, and that you're not representing us on really important issues that impact the community, like the corridor, like businesses, like adoptions and foster care. There's a lot of things that you're not representing us on, but again, I wouldn't ever call anyone a racist.
And I would likewise never call anyone not Christian. So let's talk about the fact that I am an elected member of leadership in the House caucus. And the same day you say I was in Idaho, I was also in Prosser, Washington with Dave Taylor talking about issues important to our state. The whole thing with the Bundy Ranch is that I was invited down there by the 4th District State Representative there, Michelle Fiore. And why? Because the exact same thing that started Nevada is starting in the Palouse 4 months ago. And I knew that that was happening, and there is no way I'm apologizing for that at all, because that is what true representation is. That's what leadership really is.
This one mine? Yep. And we're doing this one, right? Okay, this question is for, we're a little scrambled because we're running out of time and we have more questions than we have time. So we're trying to figure out which ones are the most important. And so what we're going to do is go to question number 25 and ask this of position 1 candidates. The current biennial budget passed with more than bipartisan support than we have seen in recent years. Would you have supported it? Why or why not? And we'd like to limit that to 30 seconds instead of the 60 shown there. And I guess, Diana, could you respond first, please?
Well, since I haven't recently read what the biennium budget was, I can't say whether I would have supported it or not. You know, the problem with the budget is it seems to be increasing every year. And I don't know that our income has increased, the revenues that have increased at the percentage that our state budget has. So I'd want to take a real close look at the amount of money that's being spent based on the percent of money that's been garnered. Sorry.
I like that rhythm. Sorry. Well, you know, the biennial budget was touted by people in the Senate, people that I do support as a great way to work together. There are some things that I did disagree with it, and specifically it had to do with just the increase in spending in some areas. So I don't think I would have voted for it. Yeah, I like that.
All right, as Bruce locates the exact slide, I will just start reading. Here we are. And this is going to be for all candidates. We'll start with position 1. So Bob, if you want to lead us off on this one. Do you support right-to-work legislation in Washington State? Why or why not?
I do support it. And the reason why is because a lot of the work the government does is the opposite of that. And we don't get to choose as a state legislature how much we're going to be spending if we're going to build so much of a road. And that alone is bad. And the city of Spokane Valley in the last few years, give a lot of credit to those guys, have put things up for bid. And we need to allow that.
Right-to-work legislation. Do I support it? Absolutely. As a small business owner, I think people have the ability to choose where they work and how they are representative. I can tell you that I was on the city council in Spokane Valley, and we did have a small union. And in 2009, when I was up for re-election, they came to us and said, you have treated us fairly, and so we're thinking about disbanding our union. So when you treat your employees fairly, then I don't think we need to have to worry about it.
All right. And I think we're starting with Josh on this one. I think you started the last one. So do you support right-to-work legislation in Washington State? Why or why not?
Yes, I do. My story comes from a personal story. When I was 16 years old and I got my first official job, it was at Rosar's. I was bagging groceries, and I worked there for about 6 months and didn't join the union in time and got fired for it. So that's why.
Not only do I support it, I've actually authored it. I've been in contact with the National Right to Work folks, And I hope to help Mike Baumgartner get that through in Washington State, because ultimately there's a freedom to peaceably assemble, but not to forcibly assemble, which really is what I think that is. But I got to tell you something, it makes it really hard to pass right-to-work legislation when you're having people accept money from WEA and the SEIU healthcare.
Okay, the next one is number 34 here. There was, let's see, let's start with Diana.
Okay.
There has been a push in Olympia to pass a transportation package, an additional tax on gasoline of at least 10 cents per gallon. Do you support any of the current proposals? Please answer yes or no, and if yes, which and why?
Well, in the transportation package, they talk about a gas increase, and I don't think that's the way we need to go. But they have talked about reforms within the Department of the Transportation. One of the things is when we do transportation projects, we charge sales tax on it, and it goes into the general fund. So either we need to eliminate paying sales tax on transportation projects, or if we're going to have them pay it, it needs to go back into the transportation fund to fund transportation projects. I'm sure there's other proposals that are in there, but there are some reforms that need to be made in the Department of Transportation that would then allow us for more money. One of the things is when they allocate money, Spokane tends to be like number 3 on the list, and then when there's overruns on the other projects, they eat up all the money. So I think when we do those transportation projects and allocate money to Spokane projects or Eastern Washington, that it be set in stone that we get the money. Give it to us first and let us keep it instead of using it for other projects.
Okay, on this question, the final sentence is, please answer yes or no, and if yes, which one and why?
Do you support any of the current proposals? I'm not cognizant of all the proposals out there, but I would not support.
Do you support an increase in the gas tax
No.
of at least 10 cents?
No.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I think the main thing for the transportation department, they don't have it.
It's a yes or no question.
Oh, well, absolutely no.
Okay.
You know, I don't. I would never vote for a gas tax increase, and we've been promised completion of the North-South Freeway in the past as a reward, you know, for people doing that. But the problem is, it's not. It's, you know, if we have less businesses driving on it, why do we need to get it completed? I think we need to get it completed, but we can do it without a gas tax. And I think it's, if we get rid of the problems of how they spend the money, then, you know, we have to go after the reforms first. And I wouldn't even look at anything unless it had the reforms standing right out front and being the priority.
Josh?
Is it?
Oh, Matt? Okay. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. The answer is no, and not only would I not support any gas tax increase, I've signed a taxpayer protection pledge that I won't vote for any tax increase, and for 6 years I have upheld that promise. What I would say about the North-South Freeway is I actually helped co-author the plan to fund it without a gas tax increase, sat at the table with Ed Orcutt, the ranking Republican on the committee, talking about that issue. We can't have any excuse to raise the gas taxes. And I know my opponent is supported by the pro-gas tax lobby. Many of his supporters are adamant that that gets passed. I can't countenance that when we've got a bridge that doesn't float right, that they literally had to pull out and glue together. We got a off-ramp built in the wrong place and a ferry leaning to one side and a multi-million-dollar machine stuck under downtown Seattle against a well casing they already knew was there. In fact, they put it there. So I can't countenance any sort of a gas tax increase, but I can countenance reforms, and I've authored the plans to do that.
Josh?
So no, I would not support a gas tax. I think the important thing, again, is there's a big difference between, for example, an employee that wants to show up on time to work and an employee that shows up on time to work. You look at the representatives from around here without a gas tax, the representatives in Walla Walla continue to build US 12. They continue to show up and build a freeway in the middle of nowhere. In this 13-15 biennium budget, Walla Walla got $360,000 for US 12, a freeway in the middle of nowhere. What did we get for the North Spokane corridor? $60,000. We need a representative that's relevant and that's present and that is willing to work to pass these reforms. If we get a couple $1 billion reformed, don't get $100 billion reformed, whatever it is we need to get those reforms through so we can start paying for our projects. We have to be relevant, we have to be present, and we can't keep sending the same people to Olympia that haven't performed and haven't gotten anything out.
Okay, we're going to go to questions from the audience. This will be for all candidates. Josh, you just finished. Why don't you start? Please tell us, are you pro-choice, pro-life? Are there any exceptions? 30 seconds. Thank you.
I am absolutely pro-life. I have been pro-life my whole life. I'm a recipient of someone being pro-life by being born, as all of you are. That is a non-negotiable for me. It's part of our faith as a believer, is being pro-life. And so, yeah, I'm absolutely pro-life. You know, we're talking about who's donating to our campaign. The president of Life Services gave us $1,000 because we're involved with them. And so it's like, we are involved with pro-life, and my wife and I donate heavily to groups that are pro-life.
Matt, I will repeat the question. Please tell us, are you pro-choice, pro-life, or are there any exceptions?
I'm adamantly pro-life, no exceptions. And not only that, I've been authoring bills every single cycle since I've been there to further the pro-life cause. My wife worked at a crisis pregnancy center, actually Life Services, and I'm endorsed by Human Life PAC, the largest pro-life organization in Washington State. There is no question, if we get the life issue wrong, we get every single other issue wrong.
Bob, please tell us, are you pro-choice, pro-life? Are there any exceptions?
I am pro-life, no exceptions at all. I'm endorsed by the Human Life PAC also. The thing is I know when people argue exceptions, they're talking about wanting to add another tragedy on top of something that was a tragedy to begin with, like a rape. And that's just isn't right. We've got to protect life. And I agree with Matt. If we get that wrong, we get everything else wrong.
Diana, please tell us, are you pro-choice, pro-life? Are there any exceptions?
I am pro-life. I believe in what Ronald Reagan said with regard to this issue. And what he had said is that he believes in life, but he did allow exceptions for rape or incest or the life of the mother. That's a hard one, but I've not walked in their shoes. So I think it's up to them to make the right decision, and hopefully God will put it in their heart as to what decision to make. But I think it needs to be in the hands of those people.
So actually, Diana, we'll start with you for this next audience question. And the way this one is stated is, what will you do to help get state funding for Bridging the Valley?
Bridging the Valley. I served on the Spokane Regional Transportation Council, where we talked about bridging the valley and the importance of that to the citizens of the 4th Legislative District. We've tried negotiating with the railroads over what they need to come to the table is, and so I would work with those legislators to work on the railroad companies. I think there is some leverage that we can use against them to have them bring money to the table, because bridging the valley is a very expensive project.
Bob, again, the question, what will you do to help get state funding for Bridging the Valley?
Well, first of all, we have to identify the cost to taxpayers. And the thing is we have to balance that with the financial benefits too. Those dollar amounts have to be closely looked at, and I would not be in favor of raising taxes in order to do that. That's the bottom line for me.
All right, I think, okay, we'll start with Matt. Yeah. What will you do to help get state funding for bridging the valley?
The same way I got funding along with Senator Padden to fund the Sullivan River Bridge, the most important project in Spokane Valley in at least 20 years. And my opponent keeps saying I don't show up for transportation meetings. The meeting he's referring to, for the record, let's set the record straight, was by a private organization to raise taxes. So yeah, I didn't attend that, and I'm proud of that fact. But I did notice that you weren't actually at the opening of the Sullivan River Bridge, and perhaps that's because it was funded without raising taxes.
Josh, again, the question is, what will you do to help get state funding for bridging the valley?
Again, it comes back to being relevant, and appreciate the shot, but you look at the Sullivan Bridge, for example. The Spokane Valley had to pull out $2.3 million of non-transportation dollars to spend it on transportation to be part of the $15.3 million project. They had to spend that money because for 10 years they've been working to get our tax dollars back that we already pay, in the gas tax that we already pay. We've been trying to get that money back. It hasn't come back. They hired a lobbyist because they don't have a representative that can represent them in Olympia.
Okay. Right there. All right, and then we will go to our final candidate-to-candidate question. So we will start with position 2, and Josh, you have the first question to Representative Shea. And it'll be 90-second answer.
Mine should be pretty short. We've been pursuing you for debates and having a free and fair and open forum, and in the email traffic with Josh here and the Northside Conservative Alliance, you controlled the venue, you controlled the moderators, you controlled every aspect of this. And when I was using my phone, there's groups of people that we invited texting me saying, hey, we're locked out, we can't come in, and we tried to get a bigger venue. My question is, would you debate me one-on-one without other candidates on the stage in a free, open forum where as many people as want to come can come?
We are debating one-on-one right next to each other. And I make it a policy every election to only debate once Democrats and progressives. And I will say that the way that you have acted, very candidly, has been dishonorable in this entire campaign, and to besmirch the Northside Conservative Alliance, which actually controlled this debate, and Josh Kearns has all the emails to show that. Nobody on my side controlled this debate. So we are debating one-on-one, and I'm glad that you recognize that you're attending all of these Democrat and progressive forums, because what I'm actually doing is attending the Sullivan River Bridge opening, where we got the funding, we've got the solution, and we made it happen. And I'm attending things like the Senate committee hearing the other day on electronic home monitoring reform, which is a big deal for this community. I didn't see you there either. So while you're at those forums, I'm doing my job.
Josh, you have a 30-second rebuttal.
Again, what are the facts? Spokane Valley had to hire a lobbyist because they couldn't have awesome or effective representation in the Capitol. They hired a lobbyist. They had to spend $2.3 million of their own money that's non-transportation dollars to put it into transportation, because for 10 years they've gotten nowhere with their representation. And as Matt Shea's in office, our share per capita of the gas tax that we already pay continues to fall. They hired a lobbyist.
All right, and so we now have Matt. You have your question for Josh Arritola.
And no rebuttal, correct? Okay. Okay.
He'll answer, and then you have a rebuttal.
Look at all of these things that are happening out there right now with the 4th District, everything that's going on. I think I'm just going to ask a simple question. Do you even know who all the high school mascots are in here in the district?
Although that's a cute question, I think it's funny that the representative that's supposed to represent us in Olympia, again, that's the question that you have for me? You know, I know you've pointed out several times that my family's not from here. I'm proud. My grandpa immigrated on the Ile de France through Ellis Island when he was 15 years old by himself. Came with a frying pan and a sheep herder staff because he was Basque, and the Basque are known for sheep herding. No, I'm not 4th, 5th, 6th, whatever it is, Generation Valley. I'm quite proud that my grandpa lived the American dream and came here and built businesses and keep trying to point me out as an outsider. The only thing leaving the state faster than businesses is you to the Pachyderm, Idaho panhandle people. It's unacceptable.
30-second rebuttal.
The correct answer is the University Titans, the West Valley Eagles, the Central Valley Bears, the East Valley Knights, the Riverside Rams. The fact you don't even know an answer to the question like that means you don't even know the district. How can you represent the district if you don't even know it? That's the point of the question. It's not a cute question. It's a serious question. You can't represent Spokane Valley if you don't know Spokane Valley.
Now move to position 1. And Diana, you have the first question for Bob. Wait. I apologize. Nope. It is Bob. I have it backwards. Thank you.
Diana, I would like to ask you what you think of the record of the city of Spokane Valley and why most of your membership was voted out.
When I left the city council in 2009, we had over $56 million in reserve for the council. We were very, very conservative. We did not spend every penny of revenue that we collected. One of the reasons that I lost my election was because the community did not like the city manager. And I can say I don't disagree with you. I felt that he needed to go. But I am only one of 7 on the council, and it takes a majority in order to get rid of the city manager. I went to the city manager and I said to him, you know, I'm going to lose my election because of you, because the community did not like his style, and I have to agree, you were right. You were right. He was not the person who should have continued as our city manager. Unfortunately, I didn't have the votes to accomplish that.
Bob, you have a 30-second rebuttal.
And I would say that if you had remained in office and committed the money to SARP and City Center, then we would have been more in debt than we had in the surplus from before.
All right, and okay. We will now move to closing statements. Diana, you get yours. I'm sorry.
Yes. Okay. As a successful business owner for over 30 years, I've dealt with yearly budgets and I've signed paychecks. As a Spokane Valley City Council member for 7 years, we were tasked with approving and administering a yearly budget of over $33 million. What's the largest budget you have ever been active in crafting?
It'll be the next budget in the legislature. It will. And honestly, my parents ran a small real estate business, and I'm proud to say that I found out how important customer service is. I still run into people, oh, your mom sold us our house. That was our first house, and now we're on the third one that we bought from her. And my dad was always loved to say that my mom was the one that was the better realtor and would have made the best legislator. So,
Diana, 30 seconds.
Thanks. We women do a better job, that's for sure.
Sexy.
I don't care. You know what? I also learned something because I was his dad's first campaign manager, so I spent lots of hours in the car with his dad learning all about how to run it and become a legislator, and I greatly appreciated all that I learned from him.
All right, we will now move on to closing statements, and we'll start with position 1, and Diana, you go first with closing statements.
Thank you. I just dropped my notes, so that's okay. First, I want to thank the Northside Conservative Action Alliance for having this, so thanks. For having this forum tonight, and all of you for coming out. Some of you I know might have been Seahawks fans, so I'm sorry that you had to... I have no idea who won, so I'm not going to tell. I won't, I promise. But I want very much to let you know how much I would like to represent you. I have the experience. I've worked with the legislators all these past 20 years because I've been active in the community. And when I was on the city council, I went and I worked with Tim Ormsby, who's a prominent Democrat who was in charge of the capital budget, in order to get money for the Green Acres Park. So I know how to deal with the other side of the aisle, and it's important that you know who your opposition is if you're going to get anything done in Olympia. And I think I can do that job. I think women tend to be more collaborative, and they're willing to not let their egos get in the way of making sure we get good legislation. So I ask for your support. Thank you.
Bob, 60 seconds, closing statement.
And I will mention up front, and not in a mean way at all, but my dad had Diana as his campaigning manager once, and that was the first time. So, and I worked with Diana to help Mike Patton get elected, but I think that, you know, the main thing is we need to really get a hold of state spending, and passing the initiative for a 2/3 majority to be able to raise taxes is one of the best ideas I've ever seen. I'm going to support it. I have supported that over the years, of being able to do that. We need to make it hard to raise taxes, and we need to make it hard for the state to spend our money. Thank you.
And for position 2, Representative Shea, you have the first closing statements.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody that came here tonight. Thank you very much for doing that and for listening. Principled leadership is not the ability to compromise, it's the ability not to. It's the ability to articulate your positions in such a way to bring people over to your point of view, to build coalitions around issues of principle, and that's exactly what I have done in Olympia with the Freedom Agenda. It's one of the reasons why it's the most successful slate of conservative bills in over 20 years. It's also one of the reasons that I was elected to leadership for the Republican caucus. That's what effective leadership actually looks like. Let's talk transportation very briefly. In 2010, for every tax dollar generated in Spokane County, we only got 74 cents back. Since I've been there, we've got it up a dime to 84 cents. And we're going to continue to do that with solutions. Last but not least, leadership doesn't just mean passing legislation. It also means getting other Republicans elected so we can have a majority in the House of Representatives in Washington State and make it happen.
Josh, 60 seconds, closing statement.
Heard a lot of things said here today. I'm running for state representative because we need somebody that's going to focus on our issues, stay in our district, and work for us and not be distracted by possibly important, maybe not important issues in other states. We desperately need someone that's going to push transportation forward. We desperately need someone that's going to push business forward, and that's what I'm willing to do for you. And my commitment to you is that I will represent everyone. I will represent Republicans, Democrats, and independents alike. And then additionally, I can promise all of the cities that if I get elected, you can fire your lobbyists, and I will represent you in the Capitol effectively.
We thank you for coming tonight, and hope that this has been educational and interesting, and that we